Have you ever had one of those days when nothing seems to go right? I should have realized that today was one of those days when I got a call to go out to the south of town to unlock a house. I've always disliked that part of town. It's full of rich snobs who think that the sun shines on their backs 24 hours. Most of them act like they know everything, so I just knew this was going to be a real hassle of a job. As I rolled up in front of the white McMansion and saw the lady of the house in a terry cloth robe and not much else, I sighed loudly. Yep, this was going to be an absolute nightmare for sure. I stepped out of my truck and grabbed my basic pick-and-bump key set, hoping against hope that this was not going to be a high-security setup like a multi-lock or Medico. Finally, you're here! I told them I needed someone fast and you took over half an hour. Thank goodness I wasn't dying or anything. I passed a smile on my face, even though I wanted to turn around, get back in my truck and leave. My client, who was doing her very best to impersonate a screech owl, was a fair representation of what I had come to expect of this neighborhood. I would guesstimate the late 30s, had some body work done, definitely too much primping of the face, and she was your basic trophy wife to some 60-year-olds I would hazard to guess. Sorry, ma'am. Got here as quick as I could. Is it the front door you are having issues with? She loudly let me know that it was, so I hurried over to it. Naturally, it was a high-security lock, an angle, which is basically a Chinese knockoff of the multi-lock brand. I silently cursed to myself, knowing that it was going to take at least 10 or more minutes to pick. I sent a short prayer to God and Sonny Jesus that it would go fast and that she would be quiet while I worked. Naturally, they both decided I needed a taste of hell and brimstone. Over the next 20 minutes, I heard a litany of what ground the lady's gears. Her husband was probably cheating, her dog had explosive diarrhea all over the dry cleaning, her son was boffing someone on the football team, and here she was, locked out with an important society event, and wasn't I just taking forever to open a simple lock? I tell you, some days you just shouldn't wake up and go to work. Finally, the last pin tripped and I spun the lock open. She rushed past me into the house, so I went back to my truck and started writing up the invoice. 5 minutes ticked by, then 10, and I'm wondering what the silly woman is up to. I walked up to the door and knocked a few times, but heard nothing. Shrugging, I trotted back to my vehicle, ripped up the invoice, and started another. A total of 45 minutes later, I hear the garage door roll up, and I see that she is coming towards me dressed in what women in this area code call fashion. So, I hand her the adjusted invoice, and she screeches about paying me for the time I waited. What did I expect? Anyway, the rest of the day was on par with the start, so I was more than ready for dinner and time with my wife when my last call was over. I drove home and noticed her car was gone, but I figured she might be at the store or something. I went inside and kicked off my boots, grabbed a cold one, and grabbed some sample locks I had been planning on practicing on. I was almost done with an old Ruco when I heard my wife's car pulling into the driveway. I set it aside and grabbed the old towel I had to wipe my hands on, hoping that she had brought some takeout home because I was starving. I guess when I heard her laughing and what sounded like a male voice speaking in low tones, I should have realized that house-fried rice was unlikely tonight. She walked into the dining room with what looked like a college kid in tow. I assume some type of athlete because he was wearing a leather jacket. Probably football, I thought. He looked beefy enough to be a safety or linebacker. My wife gestured for him to sit down across from me, then took a seat next to him. I just looked at the two of them, kind of bemused, wondering what the hell was going on here. "Hi, honey," my wife said, seemingly full of cheer. When I didn't say anything, she continued, "This is Steve. He goes to A&M and plays football for them." Marcy introduced us. I still didn't say anything, but I got a cold feeling in my gut as I started piling up the locks and putting them in the towel for storage. Marcy has been my wife's best friend from high school, and she is an unmitigated cheating woman. I've pushed and pushed to split them up, but until about a year ago I had come up short. Long story short, Marcy was married briefly. But when her husband wouldn't go along with swapping and an open marriage, she took him to the cleaners and got a divorce. My wife and I had a horrible fight after that, which took us almost a year to get over because I told her that her friend was a useless, round-heeled, cheating woman. My wife finally agreed to stop talking to her and hanging out with her, although it seems now that was a lie. Well, dear, apparently you lied to me about not being friends with Marcy any longer, so now I have to wonder exactly what you are up to this fine evening. I guess that wasn't part of whatever planned dialogue she had put together because it took her a moment to recover. I went and grabbed another beer while she had a thing or two, spinning the cap off with my thumb and dropping back into my chair. I'm really sorry, Dave. I should have told you. But Marcy has been my friend forever, and it wasn't fair of you to try to force me to give her up. She puffed up a bit as she said the last part. I reckon she had time to get back on her script. In any case, that isn't what I brought Steve here tonight to talk about with you. You see, Marcy has explained to me how you are keeping me from being able to explore things that I haven't had a chance to do, and I think we need to discuss our relationship. I pondered this for a second, then looked her straight in the eyes. So I, your husband, am holding you back? Could you be a bit more specific? Marcy thinks, and I agree, that our relationship could become so much more special if you allow me to have lovers. She said that you would enjoy seeing a younger, stronger man take me in front of you, that it would make you more excited afterwards. I see. So Marcy, a cheating woman who took everything from her husband when he wouldn't agree to a similar plan, persuaded you that I would go for this idea willingly. She nodded happily, thinking that everything was right. Well, I'm sad to say that Marcy was wrong, my loving wife. I can only assume Steve here is supposed to be the one you are going to put the horns on me with, but I've got a spot of bad news. You see, I don't agree to this, and I'm afraid I am going to have to ask Steve to leave. I paused for a second. Now, you can stay or leave with him, as I don't really give a damn one way or the other. If you stay, though, we are going to have a nice long talk about whether or not we are getting a divorce or if you are going to give up your stupid friend. Steve apparently decided that since my wife appeared to be in complete shock, it was now his time to assert himself. Look, dude, I'm going to be with your wife tonight. Now you can either sit back and accept it, stay quiet, or I can break your damn arms and make you clean me up before I move from one place to another. I chuckled. Steve, let me tell you something. Now, I ain't some ex-Navy SEAL or Special Forces guy, but your idea of fighting is probably beating up on kids at school or in a bar. This isn't going to be that type of fight. Now, you can come around the table towards me, and the first thing I am going to do is take this towel that I've bundled all these nice locks into, and I am going to try to injure you. Like, seriously injure you. And if that doesn't work, I'm going for anything else I can get my hands on, such as those knives on the magnetic strip behind me in the kitchen. I smiled at the look on his face. There is always the possibility that you will still beat the hell out of me, but be perfectly clear on this one fact. I am going to keep getting up and coming at you with anything that can mess up your nice football career until you put me down and out. And Steve, putting someone down and all the way out is usually close to killing them. So you might beat me down and end up doing a stretch in prison, where your rugged good looks will make you plenty of friends in the showers. I set down my beer and laid my hand on the towel. So I guess what you have to ask yourself is my loving, sweet wife worth losing your career or freedom over? I guess in the end it wasn't, because he turned and walked towards the door, slamming it behind him. I got up and locked the deadbolt, shaking a bit from the adrenaline coursing through me from the possible fight. I turned around and went back into the dining room and sat down, looking at my wife. So, I guess this is when you decide if you are leaving with him or calling your friend and seeing if she will let you stay with her until the divorce is over. But Dave, I don't want a divorce. I love you. This was for us, she wailed. I reached over and patted her hand. Sorry, dearest, you don't get to make those decisions anymore. She was crying and choking back snot, so I reached over into her purse and got her phone. I looked through her contact list until I found Marcy's middle name. Apparently, this was supposed to fool me, but I knew her full name from when she had her husband served. He had come to our and commiserated over some beers, telling me to watch out for Marcy's influence on my wife. Apparently, I had messed that up. Go team me. I waited for Marcy to pick up, counting the rings. A silky voice came on the line. "So, how did Dave like watching Steve with you?" I snorted. "Sorry, the wife is a bit distressed at the moment. Steve decided that he preferred not having broken joints, so he left. I need you to come pick up your fellow cheating woman and take her home with you until we sort out our divorce." I clicked end on the phone and tossed it back into my wife's purse. As I walked into the kitchen to grab some garbage bags, I looked at my soon-to-be ex-wife, and then to the sky. I just knew this was going to be a bad day. 6 months later, I was finishing up another job in that same snobby neighborhood. Different house this time, but the same type of client, another trophy wife locked out of her McMansion. At least this one had the decency to be dressed and wasn't sharing her life story. As I packed up my tools, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. Here I was, still unlocking doors for a living, while my own life had finally locked into place. The divorce had been quick, all things considered. Marcy had convinced my ex to go for the jugular, but her lawyer hadn't counted on me having recordings of their little arrangement with Steve. Amazing what a phone can catch when it's recording in your shirt pocket. I'd moved into a smaller place closer to downtown, where the calls were more frequent and the tips were better. The apartment above my new shop wasn't much, but it was mine. No more listening to stories about society events or football players with wandering hands. The funny thing about locks is that they're pretty straightforward. Either they're secure or they're not. There's no gray area, no maybe when it comes to a deadbolt. Marriages, though, those are trickier. Sometimes you don't realize how loose the pins are until the whole thing falls apart in your hands. Last I heard, my ex was still living with Marcy, though not by choice anymore. Turns out most of her friends sided with me when the story got out. The wives in her social circle didn't take kindly to the idea that Marcy was introducing college athletes to their social set. Funny how fast someone can go from social butterfly to social pariah. I still get calls from that neighborhood sometimes. Word got around about what happened, and now I'm the locksmith they trust not to hit on the misses. Business has never been better. Life's funny that way. Sometimes you have to get locked out before you can find the right key. That college kid, Steve? He transferred to a different school after someone anonymously sent his coach our little recorded conversation. I might know something about that, might not. Either way, I heard he's riding the bench at some Division II school now, probably thinking twice about trying to be anyone's bull. These days, when I pack up my tools after a job, I don't dread going home anymore. My new place is quiet, sure, but it's honest. Just me, my locks, and a fridge full of cold ones. Some people might call that lonely, but I call it peaceful. After all, the best security system in the world can't protect you from the people you trust. I learned that the hard way. Still, every now and then, when I'm picking a particularly stubborn lock, I think about that day and smile. Sometimes the worst days of your life turn out to be the best things that could have happened to you. They're like those high-security locks. They might take a while to get through, but once you do, everything clicks into place. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Here I am at a major Chamber of Commerce function about to receive an award, and Rhonda, my wife of 10 years, just whispered in my ear that she was going to leave with Gerald, my business partner, for a weekend of intimacy in Las Vegas immediately after the award ceremony. "Are you out of your mind?" I asked quietly, so as not to be heard by anyone else. "Only with desire," she whispered back. "For him." Right now, I can feel his excitement through his trousers, and soon I'll be sharing that intimacy with him. We need to talk, but not now. Later, after we get home from the ceremony, I replied. No, Ron, I'm telling you how it's going to be. If you want to talk, you can give me some ideas, or maybe remind me of the things you've always wanted me to do with you, but refused. I'll be home Monday evening and we can talk then if you still feel the need. This was the start of a 3-day weekend, and I knew she didn't have to be back to work until Tuesday. And you plotted this with him? I asked quietly. Of course. His wife also knows. I looked and saw my soon-to-be ex-partner and friend sitting next to Rhonda with a grin on his face. I wanted to punch the guy out, but not here, not in front of all these people, these so-called pillars of the community. I looked at Judy, his wife, who sat next to him. She didn't look too happy at all. Apparently, she also knew about this. My mind was racing, but I focused back on the present when I heard my name called by the master of ceremonies. I got up, shook his hand, and accepted the award, holding it for a second as a photographer took a picture. I gave my prepared acceptance speech and noticed as I did that Rhonda's hand was in Gerald's lap. I decided to make an impromptu change in my speech. On my notes, I had included an acknowledgement of my wife, but I ended my speech a bit early, not even mentioning her name. Instead, I thanked the community for their support and the chamber for the award, then ended my speech. I didn't know if anyone would notice the slight, but Rhonda mentioned it after I sat back down. What? Didn't I even rate a mention? She asked sarcastically as I took a sip of my now tepid drink. I simply glared at her, not saying a word. So that's how it's going to be, huh? Well, like I said, we'll talk Monday evening when I get back. Gerald got up and headed for the podium, deliberately bumping into me on his way up. If you go through with this, don't bother coming back, I whispered to Rhonda as Gerald spoke. There'll be nothing here for you to come back to. To emphasize the point, I slipped my ring off my finger and handed it to her. She smirked as she dropped it in her purse. You know why I'm doing this? Of course you do, she added. It's for what you did with Judy. Don't lie. I know all about it. I have pictures. So you'll say or do nothing. Let me do this and we'll talk when I get back. Don't do this, Rhonda. Nothing happened between Judy and me except dinner. We can talk about it after the ceremony. Too late. It's going to happen. The tickets have already been bought. The reservations have already been made. I'm going to give Gerald my naked body this weekend. I'm going to let him do whatever he wants to me, and there's nothing you can say or do to stop me. What if I told you he's HIV positive? I asked. She laughed. I wouldn't believe you. You'd say or do just about anything to keep me from going. Don't say I didn't warn you. I guarantee that if you do this, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Look, just enjoy the weekend without me. Go play golf or something. When I get back, things will go on as before, she said. I couldn't believe the nerve of this woman. No, they won't, Rhonda. We'll see about that, she said. A minute or two later, Gerald returned and took his seat. Rhonda turned to him, and I could see she had placed her hand back in his lap. Disgusted, I turned away from her. Finally, the event was over and we got up to leave. This is your last chance, Rhonda, I said. She and Gerald smirked as they looked at me. We're leaving now, Ron. I may call you, or not. Either way, I'll see you Monday. No hard feelings, partner. I promise not to damage her too badly for you, Gerald said. We're done, Gerald, I told him calmly. As partners and friends, I don't ever want to see or hear from you again. We'll see about that, partner, he said as he guided Rhonda away. I turned and looked at Judy, who had tears falling down her face. Do you need a ride home? I asked her. She shook her head. No, I have an Uber coming for me. Thanks for asking anyway. Didn't you tell them that nothing happened between us? That it was just a dinner and a conversation? I tried, but they wouldn't listen. Gerald has pictures of us at the restaurant, and Rhonda insists it was a prelude to an affair. You know how she can get sometimes. Yeah, I knew all right. Until now, The only complaint I had about Rhonda was her uncanny ability to act on false assumptions. And once she got something in her head, there was almost nothing anyone could do to change her mind. "I see," I told her. "I'm sorry, Ron. You don't deserve this. I only hope he thought enough to bring condoms." "It doesn't matter," I said. "Whether he uses a condom or not is immaterial. The fact that she's going to let him screw her is all that matters. No, I'm finished with both of them." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "What I need to. What about you?" I told Gerald if he went through with this, I'd divorce him. And that's exactly what I intend to do. This isn't the first time he's cheated on me, but by God, it'll be the last. "Good for you," I said. "Let me know if there's anything I can do. If you like, I can refer you to a good lawyer." "Thanks, Ron. I appreciate that." With that, she left, and I followed shortly, making my way back to the car. On the way home, I thought about the last 10 years with Rhonda. We married about 5 years after Gerald and I went into business together. Gerald introduced me to her after we had been in business together for about 4 years. By then, he and Judy had been married for 3 years. Rhonda and I dated, fell in love, and got married. Gerald was the best man at our wedding, and I never would have believed he would be capable of doing something like this. I never thought Rhonda would either. By the time we got married, the business was growing significantly, so my lawyer suggested I have her sign a prenuptial agreement to protect my assets, which included my home and the business. She didn't like it, but she signed it anyway. I made sure the agreement was equitable and included a clause for infidelity. I had a lot to do and not a whole lot of time to get it done. It was still fairly early in the evening when I got home, so I called my lawyer, Jim Simpson, on his cell. "Hey, Ron," he said. "I thought you and Rhonda would be celebrating your award tonight. What's going on?" He listened as I told him what happened earlier in the evening. "Oh my God, Ron, I'm so sorry to hear that," he said when I finished. "You want me to start drawing up papers?" "Yes, Jim. I want a divorce for adultery based on our prenuptial, and I want you to draw up papers dissolving the partnership." When Gerald and I drew up the partnership, we included a clause that said the partnership could be dissolved if one or more of the partners engaged in morally unacceptable behavior that could significantly impact the operation of the business. I felt this certainly fell into that category. "Are you sure about that?" he asked. "Yes, absolutely. I want it reorganized as a sole proprietorship if possible. I know we had talked about incorporating it as a limited liability company before. Maybe this is the time to do that." "All right, I'll get the ball rolling on that. It's going to take some time, though." "I know, but I want the partnership dissolved as fast as possible, and I want my losses mitigated as much as possible." "Consider it done, my friend," he replied. "Thanks," I said, ending the call. I knew that under the terms of the agreement, I would have to pay Gerald something to get him out of the company, so the less I had to give him, the better. I knew Jim would come through for me. A couple of hours later, I got a call from Rhonda. "I just wanted to let you know we're at the hotel in Vegas, and I'm so ready for a weekend of hot intimacy. Rhonda, you should know before you do this that Gerald is HIV positive. If you go through with this, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Stop this nonsense and come home right now. If you do, then maybe, and I do mean maybe, we can fix our marriage." "Oh, Ron," she said with a laugh. "Are you still on that? Get over yourself. This is going to happen. I am going to let Gerald have me all weekend long. In fact, I'm getting excited just thinking about it." "Rhonda, I'm warning you," I began to say, but she had already ended the call. That was it. I had warned her, but she refused to listen. The rest of my now screwed-up weekend was spent exorcising Rhonda from my life. On Jim's advice, I went to the bank on Saturday morning and took care of things there, paying off her credit card before canceling it. I got 3 voicemails from Rhonda and a few text messages over the weekend. She was doing her best to get me riled up. "Oh, yeah," she moaned in one of her voicemails. The other voicemails were very similar. I forwarded all of them to Jim so he could have them as proof of Rhonda's adultery. I also forwarded them to Judy so she could use them in her divorce from Gerald. I called a locksmith and had all of the locks changed on the doors. I wasn't worried about keeping the house, as I had bought it before we got married and the mortgage was in my name only. I tossed all of her clothes and prized possessions into trash bags and crammed them into her car, leaving enough room for her to drive. I pulled the car out of the garage and left it in the driveway. I pulled down all of the photos that included Rhonda. I broke up the large wedding portrait that hung over the fireplace before placing the broken pieces inside to be burned. By the time I was finished, there was no evidence that she had ever been in the place. After listening to her voicemails the next morning, I called her mother and said we need to talk. She invited me over for lunch, so I went. After eating a sandwich, she asked me what was going on, so I told her everything. I even played the voicemails Rhonda had left. By the time I finished, she was inconsolable. "That stupid girl. I can't believe she would do something like this to you. I'm so sorry, Ron. Of course, she can stay here until she gets back on her feet, but I'm going to tan her hide for this." "I'm sorry as well, Mom," I told her. I always thought of Rhonda's mother as Mom, especially since my own mother died from a stroke a few years before. She's going to need all the help and support you can give her. "Of course, but I'm still going to put her over my knee." I chuckled and gave her a hug. "Please stay in touch, Ron," she said as we broke the hug. I promised I would and left. She was still wiping tears from her face when I left. From there, I went to a tavern that served the juiciest burgers and enjoyed one with a couple of beers. Jim called me on Monday to say he had the paperwork drawn up, so I went to his office. Everything looked good, so I paid his retainer and left. The papers would be filed with the court the next day, which was Tuesday. "Where would you like her served?" Jim asked. "Preferably at her place of work. She humiliated me in public, so I think it's only fair I return the favor." "Okay," he said before I left. I got a couple more voicemails from Rhonda that day, the last one letting me know she was on her way home. I got a good laugh at that. Gerald dropped her off that evening at about 5:30, then took off. Apparently, he was a bit too cowardly to face me after what he had done. I waited and heard her come onto the porch. I heard her trying her keys, but none of them worked. Finally, she rang the doorbell. I ignored it for a few minutes, and she began pounding on the door. "Let me in, damn it!" she yelled. I got up and walked to the door. I opened it and stepped outside. She looked at me before trying to walk inside, but I stopped her. "What are you doing? I live here too." "No, you don't. Not anymore. You gave up that right when you left Friday night." "But I told you I would be back and we could discuss things if you still wanted to. And why is my car in the driveway? Why isn't it in the garage? And what's all that stuff in it?" "That's all your stuff, Rhonda. Like I said, you don't live here anymore." "Look, I know you're upset. We can talk about it if you want," she replied. "I wanted to talk with you on Friday, but you weren't interested, remember? I practically begged you to listen to me, but you flat out refused and insisted on spending the weekend with Gerald." "That's right. Since you had his wife, I figured I deserved to get some revenge." "And what proof do you have that I had intimacy with Judy? Show me." She pulled out her phone and showed me a picture of Judy and me at a table in a restaurant. "What's that?" she asked. "That's two people talking over dinner. There's no intimacy in that picture, and nothing happened between Judy and I. For that matter, I have never been with another woman since you and I became exclusive." "Then why were you having dinner with her? Surely you expected something afterward." "There you go again, making false assumptions," I said. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about on Friday, but you refused to listen to me. Tell me, did Gerald ever use a condom this weekend?" "Of course not. You know I hate condoms," she replied. "I see, and I guess you let him finish inside you multiple times." "That's right. I still have some of him inside me right now. I was going to let you clean it out of me. And if you were truly sorry, I would have considered being intimate with you, but I don't think that's going to happen." "So, you were planning to kill me then?" I said. Her eyes grew wide. "Of course not. Where did you get that silly idea from? Do you remember a few months back when he said he wasn't feeling too well? That was just a few weeks after he returned from a trip back east." "Yeah, I remember," she said. "I suggested he go see his doctor and get checked out. He never told me what the doctor said, but Judy learned he tested positive for HIV. You want to know how she learned about it? I'll tell you. She learned about it because he infected her. She tested positive just recently. That's what we were talking about at dinner that night. At the time he infected her, he didn't know he had it, but he sure as hell knew this last weekend when he was screwing you." I handed her a copy of Gerald's test results Judy had given me the night we had dinner. Rhonda's face turned white and her eyes widened. "I even told you on Friday, but you refused to listen." "Oh my God," she said, feeling nauseous. "You were telling the truth. I'm going to get sick." She doubled over and vomited in the front yard. I stood and watched as she retched several times in the front yard. When she finished, she looked at me, scared. "I'm going to die, aren't I?" she asked. I shrugged my shoulders. "I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. Judy said her doctor told her it's not the death sentence as it was a few years ago, but it's still pretty rough. At any rate, I suggest you go see Dr. Barnes first thing in the morning and let him know. Have him run some tests on you. Maybe if he can catch it early enough, he can do something. But I do know that our marriage is dead." "Where will I go?" she asked, tears falling down her face. "Your mother said you can stay with her until you get on your feet," I replied. "My mother? You told my mother?" she asked, shocked. "Yes, she deserves to know the truth, don't you think?" "I guess," she replied. "And you'll be served with divorce papers at work sometime this week." "Please, no, I don't want a divorce. Can't we work through this?" "No. We probably could have if you had talked to me on Friday instead of leaving me to spend the weekend with him in Vegas. But you just had to have things your way. You made your bed, Rhonda. Now you get to lie in it." "So what were you doing with Judy in that restaurant?" she asked. "I already told you. Talking. She got her test results and wanted to talk to me. She asked if I had any idea he was positive. Of course, I told her the truth. I didn't. I was trying to find a way to help the two of them get through this. But it seems Gerald decided to have her followed. He got those pictures of us in the restaurant. Naturally, when you saw them, you made your usual false assumptions, and here we are. I hope it was all worth it to you." "Please, can't you just give me one more chance? I'm dying here," she begged. "I've been dying since you walked out on me Friday night," I replied. "But I love you," she cried. Yeah, right, I thought. Don't you have any love for me at all? Love you? Right now I don't even like you. Now get off my lawn. I walked back inside and slammed the door, locking it behind me. I looked through the window and saw her, sobbing as she knelt on the lawn. She looked totally defeated and forlorn, but right then, I didn't care. Eventually, she turned and slowly ambled to her car, still crying. As I watched, she backed out of the driveway and drove off, still crying. The next day, I got to the office early, hoping to catch Gerald when he came in. I had already advised security to confiscate his badge when he came in and had a couple security officers waiting by his office. When he arrived, he gave me a smirk, but lost it when he saw the officers. "What's this all about?" he asked. "They're here to confiscate your badge and make sure you don't take any company property when you leave." "Leave? I'm not going anywhere." "Wrong answer. As of today, the partnership is dissolved. You no longer work here." "That's not true. You can't do that." "Read the agreement we both signed," I said, tossing a copy of it on his desk. I highlighted the appropriate clause. The dissolution of the partnership is being filed this morning, and the company is temporarily being reorganized as a sole proprietorship. I'll give you 15 minutes to pack your trash and get off the property before I have you escorted out. "Is this all because I had your wife over the weekend?" he asked. Partly, it's also for deliberately exposing her to HIV, which I've been told is a crime in this state." "What?" he asked. "I saw your test results. Judy showed them to me. That's what we were discussing that day in the restaurant. She told me you infected her as well. I was planning to make you a silent partner so you could keep your medical coverage and still earn an income. But what you did this weekend was beyond the pale. You know you're infected, but you still chose to spend the weekend with Rhonda without informing her. That's illegal in this state. The two of you had this all planned out, except she didn't know you're HIV positive. In my view, what you did violates the terms of our partnership agreement. I had considered giving you a severance package, but in light of your actions, I've changed my mind. Now get out!" "You can't do this. I'll fight you on this. So help me God, I'll start spreading rumors that you've been screwing half the female staff here, threatening their jobs if they don't go along with what you want." "Really? You'd deliberately slander me in the community for revenge? On top of deliberately infecting my wife with HIV so she could infect me?" "Goddamn right," he replied. "By the time I'm done, you won't have any business at all." I smiled and pulled an audio recorder from my pocket. I hit a button and played our conversation back to him. "I think that should add a few million to the lawsuit and help secure a conviction. Not to mention the fact that you made your claim in front of at least 2 witnesses. Right?" I asked, looking at the 2 security guards, who smiled and nodded their heads. I looked at my watch. "You know, I used to think you were my best friend. I also used to think you were quite intelligent. I see now that my initial assessment of you was wrong. You have 10 minutes to pack up and get the hell off my property." I looked at the guards before speaking again. "Keep an eye on him. Make sure he doesn't touch his computer and only takes what's his." "Yes, sir, Mr. Hastings," one of the guards said. Gerald packed his stuff as the security guards watched. On his way out, he stopped by my office. "I'm sorry, Ron," he said. "Just go. Get out." After Gerald left, I called a meeting of all employees. It was crowded in the main office, but I felt they deserved to know there would be changes. I told them that Gerald was no longer with the company and the partnership had been dissolved. I assured them that this change wouldn't affect their jobs in the long run, but could cause some short-term disruption. One of the employees asked why Gerald left, but all I would say is that it was a personal matter. The next several weeks were a blur. Rhonda was served with divorce papers at her place of work on Thursday, which prompted a great deal of gossip. Her mother told me she had gone to see the doctor on Tuesday, but it would be a while before she got the results of her tests. Thankfully, Rhonda didn't deluge me with calls or texts. It seems she finally realized that she had made a huge mistake, one that would affect her for the rest of her life. Realizing there would be no reconciliation, she signed the papers. Jim told me the divorce would be final in 90 days. Judy filed for divorce against Gerald on the grounds of adultery. She told me he was living in a motel room that was rented by the week until he could find something else. But he had another problem. After Rhonda's visit, Dr. Barnes reported Gerald to the authorities. From what I learned, the state we live in requires those infected with HIV to inform their partners before any sexual activity takes place. Since Rhonda said Gerald never informed her, he could receive up to 20 years in prison. I also learned that this was one of those laws many prosecutors didn't like to enforce, since there was too great a chance of backlash. But the local authorities decided to go after Gerald, based on Rhonda's testimony. A week or so after being kicked out of his house, police showed up at the motel where he was staying and took him into custody. Concerned that he could present a danger to the general population, he was placed in solitary confinement. Gerald's trial became something of a circus. The prosecuting attorney painted him as a cruel, manipulative SOB who deliberately set out to infect me, his partner, with the disease by first infecting Rhonda. Rhonda testified, as did I. Judy also testified. The prosecutor also played the audio I captured in my office, putting Gerald in an even worse position. It didn't take long for the jury to convict. Disgusted by what he heard, the judge sentenced him to the maximum allowable by law, 20 years in the state penitentiary. But Gerald's problems were far from over. Now he was in the middle of a divorce as well as civil litigation. After Judy's divorce was finalized, she sold her home and moved out of the area. Rhonda contacted me a few days before our divorce was final and asked me if I would have dinner with her. After thinking about it, I agreed. I felt it was time for closure. We met at a quiet restaurant where we enjoyed a final meal. "I hope you're not too scared or ashamed to be seen with me," she said. "We're not going to be swapping any bodily fluids, so it shouldn't be a problem," I told her half-jokingly. "I got the results of my test. I'm positive." "I'm not surprised, but I am sorry to hear that. It's not your fault. You tried to warn me, but I wouldn't listen. It's a mistake I'll be paying for the rest of my life." "So, what is the doctor doing?" I asked. "He's got me on an antiretroviral therapy. It'll never be cured, but he tells me I can live a fairly normal life if I take the drug every day. Of course, I had to let my boss know. He's letting me telecommute so I can work from home, and Mom says I can stay with her as long as I need to." "That's good to hear," I replied. "My lawyer is also filing a lawsuit against Gerald. I've been told it's pretty much a slam dunk with his conviction, but collecting may be an issue with him being in prison and all." "I see. Well, I happen to know that his 401k was pretty substantial, even after subtracting Judy's portion. She also sold their house, so maybe you can get his half of that. Have you spoken with her recently?" "I have," she said. "She's out of the area, but we still talk from time to time. I'll mention that to her and see what she says." "What happened to you, Rhonda? I don't get it. I wanted to have kids with you, spend the rest of my life with you." "I don't know. When Gerald showed me those pictures of you with Judy, I lost it. I just knew you were having intimacy with her. I really jumped the shark on that, didn't I?" "Just a bit. But why didn't you just talk to me?" "I was angry. I didn't want to hear anything you had to say. Judy tried to warn me as well, but I figured she was in cahoots with you and would say anything to stop me. I even told you that Friday about Gerald. Twice. I hoped you would have gotten the hint. Frankly, I didn't want to hear anything you had to say, and now I'm paying the price. I'll be paying it for the rest of my life. Can you ever forgive me for being so stupid?" "I don't know," I replied. "Right now, it's all I can do to be civil around you." "I thank you for that at least. I know it's probably not easy for you. So, how are you holding up?" "I manage. I stay pretty busy with the business. Now that Gerald is gone, my workload has doubled, so there's no shortage of things to do." "Any women in your life?" she asked. "No, I'm not in the market for a relationship. Probably won't be for quite a while. Once bitten, twice shy, you know." "I'm sorry," she replied. "I've learned a thing or two myself from all of this," I said. "What's that?" she asked. "Never trust anyone. I knew Gerald for years before I met you. That is, I thought I knew him. I had no idea he was capable of doing what he did. And the things I learned about him during their divorce frankly make me sick to my stomach. And what you did certainly didn't help." "I'm sorry," she replied. "Yeah, well, it is what it is. I see you're still wearing your rings," I added, looking at her left hand. "We're still technically married, at least for a few more days. If you want them back, you can have them, but I was hoping you'd let me keep them." "I don't want them," I replied. "I'd just take them down and sell them anyway. Why would you want them?" "As a reminder of what I once had and threw away. They're yours. Do with them what you want." "Thank you," she said quietly, a tear falling down her cheek. "I'd better get going now. I have a lot to do yet tonight. Tell your mother I said hello and good luck." "I will, and thanks, Ron. I really am sorry about all this." "Yeah, me too, Rhonda. Goodbye." I could hear her sobbing as I left. I wasn't as angry as I was when this all first went down, but I still felt sad. It's not easy ending a decade-long relationship with someone you thought you'd spend the rest of your life with. Work went on as normal, and within a year, things had settled down to a steady roar. I had plenty of opportunities, but chose not to date or pursue a relationship. I still had some serious trust issues after what Rhonda and Gerald had done. For me, life consisted of working, eating, and sleeping. I had no social life whatsoever. A year and a half after my divorce, Denise, my secretary, introduced me to her younger sister, Angela, at a company event. She was a couple of years younger than me and had just gotten through a divorce from her husband, who left her for another woman. We began dating, taking things one step at a time, slowly. Both of us had been burned by our previous spouses and still had some trust issues. But as we spent more time together, our trust in each other grew. We dated several times over the course of a month before we ended up spending the night together in my bed. A few months later, I popped the question and she said yes. Our wedding is set for the spring, to be followed up with a 5-day Caribbean cruise. We extended an invitation to Rhonda's mother, but we don't know if she plans to attend. I'm still hurting from what Rhonda and Gerald did, but Angela has done a superb job of healing the scars. I've done my best to help her heal as well, and I'm certainly looking forward to spending the rest of my life with her. Thinking about Angela, I'm often reminded of the old saying, sometimes the bad things that happen in our lives put us directly on the path to the best things that will ever happen to us. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.